Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Hello.
Good morning.
What a great looking crowd, you guys. Wow. Filling up all the tables here at the Edina Country Club. Welcome to the Edina Morningside Rotary Club. We meet every Tuesday morning at 7:30, bright and early. I am Margaret Rose, your president. Thank you for joining us today. We have quite the crowd here. I know we have a lot of people on Zoom as well, so we welcome all of our Zoomers and any guests that are joining us via Zoom. Please let us know. Okay, so I am delighted and honored to welcome KENDALL QUALLS. I think in the past year or two or so, we talked a little bit, talked again, and just really love what he is doing for the community here in the Twin Cities. KENDALL QUALLS is the president of Take Charge. Take Charge strives to unite Americans regardless of background toward a shared history and common set of beliefs. They celebrate with people that have achieved the American dream while encouraging people still working to achieve it. KENDALL leads an organization that inspires and educates Black and other minority communities to take charge of their own lives and not to rely on government and politicians for redemption and prosperity. Mr. QUALLS has a unique vantage point to convey that message and to plant the seeds of change desperately needed. During his childhood, Mr. QUALLS, or KENDALL, lived with his divorced mother and siblings in the housing projects of Harlem, New York in the late 1960s. That's a lot. That's a big deal. Before middle school, Mr. QUALLS left New York City to live with his father, who lived in a trailer park in Oklahoma. Neither of his parents finished high school. Despite the challenges and turmoil of his early life, Mr. QUALLS worked full-time to pay for college, served as an officer in the U.S. Army, thank you so much, earned 3 graduate degrees, including an MBA from the University of Michigan. He worked his way up the ranks at several Fortune 100 healthcare companies, became a global vice president of an $850 million business unit. Mr. QUALLS champions the principles of meritocracy and supports the notion that free enterprise and the private sector are the fastest and most equitable way to lift people from poverty to prosperity, including Black Americans. Mr. QUALLS has been married to his beautiful wife, Sheila. I added the beautiful. For 35 years. They have 5 children together. Beautiful. You got to see them on Facebook. They're just gorgeous family. He was a mentor at Minnesota Adult and Teen Challenge, which is amazing. He serves on the board for Lundstrom's Performing Arts Center in North Minneapolis, as well as Hope Farm School, a school for at-risk boys from Minneapolis. Please welcome Mr. KENDALL QUALLS.
Well, I was listening to that. I can't wait to hear that guy speak. Well, thank you so much for having me. For those of you on Zoom, thank you so much for tuning in. I feel safe because you can't throw anything at me, when you're on Zoom. But I'm happy to have my wife here with me. And I'll just tell you a quick story. Sheila and I, we met in high school, and we dated in high school. And I was telling our kids when they were much younger, then when we were on a date, we actually went to a drive-in theater. We were in a small town that still had those around when we were in high school. And so one of my boys said, what's a drive-in theater? And I told him, to explain, well, it was what they had when we were in high school, but basically it was like an outdoor theater. It was this big open field. They have a screen that was the size of like a 5-story building. You pull up to it, there's a pole, and you take your speaker out, and you put it inside the car, and then you watch the movie through the windshield. And they all paused and looked. Then they looked at their mom and said, "Mom, is Dad telling the truth?" So today, as I go through today's events and share with you about critical race theory, what I'm doing with Take Charge, if you don't believe what I can say, you can ask Sheila. She'll tell you the truth, just like she told our kids. So I'm going to set up the slides here on the screen. Hopefully you guys can see that okay. And typically, there, got it? All right. know how to minimize this side here. There we go. So typically, I move around quite a bit, but I have to stay here for the folks on Zoom. So I started Take Charge on January 18th. I did it on purpose because January 18th was Martin Luther King holiday. And it was the day also that my op-ed was published in the Star Tribune. I'm going to go to that in just a minute, but I want to say things as I speak today. I think the thought of the day that was read earlier, exactly what I'm doing. You know, I'm doing something that's beyond my comfort zone towards truth, and trying to uplift everyone. So my comments are not to be intended to hurt or to minimize anyone. I believe that people are working, that some of the people that are working on the critical race theory have good intentions, may not necessarily know the full picture. So I'll share this as we go along. So my op-ed on January 18th, Martin Luther King holiday, was the day we launched Take Charge. And I did it again purposely because at that time I said, if Martin Luther King was alive today, he would be rolling in his, he would be so upset. He's rolling in his grave today, but if he was alive, he would be really upset for three reasons in the op-ed. Number one, the day that he was shot, the American Black family was nearly 80% two-parent families. And in our lifetime, it's gone from nearly 80% two-parent families to 80% fatherless homes. That's not who we were as a culture. It's not who we were. And something changed. I'll share what that catalyst for change was and what it's done to the culture over time. Second, this idea of education. Now a lot of the civil rights movement was based on having equal access to education, not inferior education, but give us access to education so we can actually improve our lot in life. I tell people American Black slaves were tortured just trying to learn to read. And unfortunately, we lost that motivation in the culture. Right now in Minneapolis, 50% high school graduation rates in Minneapolis public schools for Black kids. Black children from Mississippi graduate at a higher rate than we do here locally. But overall, nationally, it's something that we need to address as a culture. And then the last issue that I wrote about in that op-ed was the idea of content of character was what we judge each other on, not color of skin. And the fact that we were being judged in the 60s, obviously before that, because of our Black skin color, right? That we marginalized. That's when I said the country did have systems in place that marginalized our culture. But you fast forward today, I tell people, look, the life that I lived is much better than the life my father lived. We have improved as a country. We're obviously not perfect. We made improvements over time, but to say that this country is systemically racist is absolutely wrong, and it minimizes the challenges and everything else that past generations have gone through. So those were the key points of what I made. So when we fast forward today, what we're doing with Take Charge, we have 5 pillars. I've already went through 3 of them. That number one, we completely reject identity politics. If it was wrong, if skin color was judgment wrong in the 60s, by law, it's wrong today. And it doesn't matter where that gun is pointed, it's still wrong. The idea that education is a pathway for success for anyone. It's the pathway for anyone out of poverty to prosperity. And third, this idea that, that we're not going to be able to prove if the whole nuclear family is utterly destroyed. I mean, we're looking at a cultural genocide, that 80% two-parent family issue. It's huge. And I'll talk about that later. And then the two other bullet points that are key to our pillars that Take Charge is the free market is the fastest way. I mean, literally, there's been countries and cultures around the world that has been transformed through capitalism. And for some reason, we consider it a bad word in this country, and we got to do a better job of educating our young people about the merits of a free market system. And then last bullet point for Take Charge is this idea that public officials, the first obligation they have to their elected, their party, the people that they're supposed to serve, is public safety. And I'm going to share a little bit about the stuff that I went through as a kid around this. So why me? Why am I doing this? You know, I've said that there are two classes of people that probably are most passionate about the freedoms of our country because they've seen it without it. They've lived a life without it. It's usually those people that are first generation immigrants from socialist countries or you know, totalitarian countries. They're the ones that see this country as, my gosh, we've finally been saved. You know, we have a different way of life. And the second group of people are those that have come from the lowest rungs of our culture and have actually achieved something that we're what we would call prosperity. And I fit in that category. And so that's why I did. So this is a picture of my family. It's unfortunate I don't have a family portrait because we never had one. You know, our family, my family broke up at an early age. So I'm just using these stick figures as I can to kind of describe what happened. So when my dad returned from Vietnam, my parents divorced, and we moved from Fort Campbell, Kentucky, home of the 101st Airborne, to Harlem, New York in the late 1960s. And my mom took all 5 of us there. And this is unfortunately, my older brothers and sisters got absorbed in the street culture. Fast forward later in life, 3 of them unfortunately were incarcerated. 4 of them, you know, were involved in drugs. And for me, you know, what I saw when I was a kid, going from 1st grade to 2nd grade was, I don't want to live this life. I don't want to be like the guys that held us up on day 1 in Harlem. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how I was going to do it, but I've figured it out as I go. So that's why I'm involved. The collateral damage that we see in our culture, in our cities, is what I experienced personally. So this is my dad in the middle. When I lived in Harlem for about 4 years, he came and got me and my younger brother to live with him. Now, I was pre-teen, so here, you know, you're getting in trouble and you're getting independent and, you know, you're feeling semi like you're a man. But when your dad's a drill sergeant, that only happens for like 5 minutes, all right? You get in trouble one time, the next time you get in trouble, you're on a missing person report. So this, as I mentioned, this was our life. We moved to New York, then Harlem. That's what it was like, you know, appearing on day 1. We were held up day 1, literally, right a block away from our grandparents' apartment. And then we moved back to Oklahoma. So I tell people, I've been called a ghetto kid, a trailer trash, and a lot worse. But the neat thing about our country is where you start in life is not where you have to stay in life. I didn't know how I was going to do it. I didn't know what approach to take. I didn't have history, but I knew it started with an education. So after high school, I worked full time. I paid my way through college. I graduated in 1985 from a state school in Oklahoma, went on active duty. And while I was on active duty serving, I went back and got a master's degree. And then I served in Korea. And when I came back, I went and got another master's degree. And because if I'm going to do this civilian thing, I better do it right. So all my degrees are from Oklahoma. The majority of them are from Oklahoma. I tell people I don't have an Ivy League education. I have a tumbleweed education. Okay, but the thing that I also have, what I call a PhD. Instead, I have a PhD. Is poor, hungry, and determined. You know, at fire in the belly. That by far is what's needed in this country to be successful. If all you have is fire in the belly and a good basic education, it doesn't have to be college. It could be trades. It could be anything else. But that earnest desire to improve yourself, this is the country to do it in, regardless of your background. And so I later went back and I tell people I got my MBA from the U of M, and it's that other U of M in Ann Arbor. And I had a great career. I served 5 years here in the United States. I served on the DMZ in South Korea. I tell you, when you look at the benefit of what we do around the world, there's no better living case study than the Korean Peninsula. You know, basically you have one ethnic group divided by a line of freedom that all of us guarantee for those people in the South. When I was there in 1990, what was interesting is what we already saw there, and it's even more so now, is that their cousins in the North, they're shorter and their weight is, they're lighter in their physical appearance because of nutritional issues between the two North and South Koreans. Again, one ethnic group, happened over 50 years now, 50, 60 years since the war. But when I was there, I call it Korea 1.0. I think they just started, importing Hyundais, and they weren't that good. Some of the electronics weren't that great. That's why they had to have a 10-year warranty. But Korea 2.0 literally have replaced GE appliances in almost every American home, with Samsung, LG, and Hyundais are ubiquitous across the country, because they adopted free market systems into the capitalist and didn't adopt socialism. That was their choice. They're not a colony of the United States. We just ensure that they're free of any type of invasions, and they choose what direction they want to have. It's an amazing case study. I think if I had time enough to do it, I would do a PhD on that. So for me, this is a long journey to get here. You know, Margaret talked about my family. You know, I share this picture with you to kind of give you an idea of all the siblings that I have on my side of the family. None of them knows what it's like to grow up with mom and dad in the home from the time that they were born to the time they left. None of them. And I don't say that I say that as an observation of what's happened to our culture and what we've kind of deemed as, you know, acceptable, and what we're going to change and take charge. And so I'm going to share. So we want to make sure that this picture that we have here is not the exception in the Black community. And we want to change it back to the norm of where it used to be. We don't have to accept things as they are in this country as leaders. Americans can determine their own fortune, their own destination. We don't need permission from the government to take initiatives on things. So I want to give you a historical perspective. As I mentioned, the Black community historically, 80% two-parent families. That's through the Great Depression. That's through Jim Crow laws. That's through segregation. All of the negative things that we know in our history, nearly 80% two-parent families. And the culture was rooted in faith, family, and education. Faith, family, and education. We didn't have much, tangible assets, but we had that. And so the next question we'll ask them, well, what happened? What was the catalyst for change around that? Well, at the time of Martin Luther King's death, 4 months after he passed, there was the last of the Civil Rights Bill was passed. And now, free access, because all the Civil Rights Movement wanted was give us free access to our citizenship of the Constitution. We just want to be constitutionally to have the same rights as any other citizen. Nothing more, nothing less. And we got that after his assassination. But there was a group, and ironically, the same institutions that introduced critical race theory are the ones that introduced the social programs. One of them is Aid to Family with Dependent Children. So for the first time in our culture, introduced a program that provided a financial incentive to unmarried women that if they had children, they would keep that financial incentive as long as they remain unmarried. Hybrids of that program still exist today. And they literally had people that would go in and inspect the home to make sure there was not a man in the house. Well, what did that, and in fact, that slide over there in the left corner is a document. It's coming from Charles Murray's book, and it basically highlights the caseloads that happened between 1960 and 1975. Significant increases in caseloads up to 125% within a 5-year block time. So what did that cause? So at that time, when that program was introduced, I mean, look, I'm in the private sector. You guys are as well. You show me a financial incentive and I'll show you the outcome behavior. And that's the kind of impact that it had. All of these slides are publicly available. They're published data, and it shows the significant increase, statistically significant increase in the Black community versus other demographics. And at the time, actually the country was warned by Daniel Patrick Moynihan. Now, Daniel Patrick Moynihan was a senator from the state of New York. Before that, and during this time period, he worked in the LBJ administration. He wrote a report called The Crisis of the Black Family. And in that report, he said, look, there are 24% in the Black community of women, unmarried moms having children. And if this continues, they will be cut off from the economic benefit of this country. They won't be able to participate in society, social norms, and all of that would be an issue. Well, he was told to sit down, be quiet. He was a racist. He didn't know what he's talking about. Unfortunately, they didn't take his report seriously, because everything in his report has come to fruition. Now, you can Google his report. It's Daniel Patrick Moynihan, Crisis of the Negro Family, it was called back then. It's a 65-page report. So what does that what has happened to that? So you see a significant increase in unmarried births. You see a significant decline in the Black community in marriage, okay, cornerstone of civilization, nuclear family. And that's the beginning of disparity. Now, one of the premises of critical race theory is look at the disparity that we see in the Black community, the racial disparities. Well, if you're only looking at that one variable, that's what it will look like. But if you got to look at other variables, and one of those other variables is the nuclear family disruption, because when you look at Black families that have that nuclear family today, two-parent Black family, regardless of education levels, their children perform at the normal distribution curves of our culture, of our country. So that was the beginning of disparity, and we started seeing behavioral norms like this. That picture on the left, was late 60s, early 70s. Again, we didn't have much, but this is what the culture looked like. The picture on the right, I tell people if I were to touch the door, heading outside the door of my home, and my father saw me dressed like that, the only thing left would have been my hand on the door. This is the difference between having fathers in the home and not having dads in the home. That's a cultural shift. This is not who the Black community used to be, and it's something that we need to address in a big way. And I'll talk about that again a little bit later. What it also resulted in, we're number one in all the wrong things. So I spent my entire career in the healthcare industry at national levels, looking at national data across several different therapeutic categories and disease states, not only in the pharmaceutical industry, but also in the med device industry. National levels, I've traveled the globe, I've sought this information, not just at the national level, but a global scale. So what did this cultural shift cause from the health of a culture? So if you take a look at this report, it's a busy report, I'll walk you through it. Every year, the Center for Disease Control, the CDC, publishes a report on the health of Americans. This particular slide is the health of Black males in the United States. This far left column, you look at the pediatric population. Typically, the cause of death in a pediatric population and other demographics is childhood disease, childhood cancers, this birth defect, something related to a pediatric population, sometimes cancer. Not homicide as number one. Homicide is number one for ages 1 through 19 in the Black community. And this was published several years ago. So this report's a little old, but it's consistent. It's 2019. This is not police shootings. This is Black on Black crime, homicides in the community, okay? And in fact, sadly, it's also for the next group too, 20 to 44. Number one cause of death. Again, we're number one in all the wrong things. This is another busy slide. You just orient yourself to the far right column. This is diabetes. Of all demographics, Black Americans are number one in diagnosis of diabetes. This is the same thing for obesity. Same thing for sexually transmitted diseases. Again, these are all published data. This one's CDC. We're only 12% of the population, but we're number one in cases of sexually transmitted diseases. Number one in new cases of HIV. Again, 12% of the population, new cases of same-sex and heterosexual HIV cases. Now, what's unfortunate in our society is that when the government looks at these data, they look at it in silos. Oh, we need a HIV education program, or we need a diabetes program. They're not looking at it holistic. We need a family recovery program. And we never acknowledged it. And yeah, I'll talk about that a little bit later. This one right here is just kind of summation of the fatherless issue. It's not by ethnicity. This is what we know from statistics generated from the Justice Department and Department of Corrections and all this. So 90% of the homeless kids, runaways, fatherless homes, just go down the list of all the social ills in this category, and it's something consistent. And we'll share what is the correlation between Black Americans and this fatherless home, why does it have such a high percentage? I share this picture. This is Norman Walkwell's picture. It's from the Brown versus Board of Education case. And again, how education was so important in the Black community during that era between the 40s, 50s, 60s, and in the 70s, and then again, obviously the change that happened, which I shared earlier. This is from Minneapolis Public Schools. This is a report that goes, and it's hard to see but I'll just talk you through it. That's from 2014 to 2017. I just highlighted African-American children scored the lowest, and this, I think this is math and reading scores. However, this is the Minneapolis public schools. What's sad about this thing for me is many of you are natives of this state. My wife, my family, we chose this state to call home. This is our adopted home state, because what we found with all the quality of life features that we really enjoyed living here. So we selected this. We didn't know about, this is the one parameter, the quality of life metrics in this state is the highest, one of the highest I've ever, state we lived in. We had 9 corporate moves. And, but I didn't know about this. This was shocking that this was one of the graduation rates of these kids in downtown and Twin Cities is one of the lowest in the country. And it's been like that for several consecutive years. And unfortunately, these moms that want their kids out don't have school choice. And that's something that we also promote as part of Take Charge. So I share people like, look, this is not a skin color issue, because the kids in the same neighborhoods, same streets that go to those schools where they're failing, if you go to Hope Academy, Cristo Rey, Ascension, those kids perform above the national average in test scores, and they graduated in 95% range, high school graduation rates. So the issue is not skin color, is actually other factors and variables. And so, in fact, there was a Wall Street Journal published. I have this one that's May 14th. There was a study done because what the Department of Education wanted to do was they looked at the expulsion rates of kids, and they saw, well, there's more Black kids being expelled versus any other demographic. And what these guys are saying, don't look at that one variable. When you look at just skin color alone, right? So there was a study done by these 2 gentlemen in this report, Wilcox and I don't remember his last name, and Nichols. That study showed that kids from two-parent families, Black kids, that their expulsion rates were less than half of those of, I mean, this is stuff, this is intuitive. We just think intuitive, but they had to do a study on it. Not only was it less than half than the Black kids from fatherless homes, it was less than the white kids from fatherless homes. So again, that variable skin color, it's not the variable skin color, we're looking at the variable of nuclear family. So what I share with people, like, look, this is a warning. If anything, what has happened in the Black community is a canary in the coal mine. Because the first time in American history, 50% of all births are to unwed moms under 30. And what I'm sharing with people is that when you look at this data in white and Hispanic communities, the unwed birth trend is higher than where it was from the Black community 40, 50 years ago. So again, how this happens, how this happened in our country is something that we don't have to have a national conversation about. Is it worth for us having this conversation about the nuclear family, which never seems to be on the solution list for critical? When you look at the solutions for critical race theory, a lot of the solutions are pretty radical. For redistribution, it's reprogramming of how you self-identify. You're a racist, and even though you don't know you're a racist, that type of thing. But none of the solutions are, should we look at the structure of the nuclear family, the basic building block of any civilization? And so this is what we're promoting. So in a Black community, how do we get this back? Where do we go from here? And so what I'm doing, I'm doing, working on 2 fronts. Number one, I'm helping to educate parents and people about critical race theory and what they can do to address it. That's a full-time job. And my other full-time job is going in the Black community and helping us return to our cultural roots of faith, family, and education. That's where we were before we got help from the government, right? And who's helping? Who's leading the charge? I've always said it's the most dangerous weapon known to mankind, right? Moms. And so we're recruiting mothers and grandmothers from the community to help return the culture back to its roots. And we're barely 5 months old, and we have 20 people so far. 15 of them are moms and grandmoms. Some of them have went that way and have been on public assistance, have come back. Some of them never got that way. We have two attorneys. We have men that were used to sell drugs, come back, and they're part of our movement, and it's growing every day from the Black community of the Twin Cities. And by the end of the year, what I hope to have is 75 to 100 people. I train the group, and they go out in the community, and they get in front of young kids, elementary, middle school kids, their peer group, and say, you know what, we didn't used to live like this. We can change this stuff, okay? We can change the behavior, and this is what we need to do. And they're getting involved with a lot of after-school organizations, a lot of organizations that are serving the poor to help with this re-education program directly. We're not going through any church organizations or anything. We're doing this directly, and we're getting a lot of nonprofits that want to partner with us because they understand exactly what we're trying to accomplish, and especially with the men and women that are involved. We got a few guys here. So I wanted to have you as with the guy's picture here. I want to alert you to this Sunday's Star Tribune. We have a half-page ad, Father's Day ad coming out. It's going to be pretty provocative. So just if you get a subscription, make sure you see that in the first section. If you don't, just pick up a Sunday paper this Sunday. All right. And in addition to boots on the ground, if you've been to our website, you've seen some of the videos we've released. Short little snippet videos, impactful, personal, and they connect head and heart. I think one of the things we do as Americans, we haven't done our young people a good job. I mean, the virtues, the benefits of who we are as a country are not clearly conveyed with the people that live in this, our country, our kids, our students. It's amazing. We have people from outside the world, outside our country, all around the world that want to, the first thing they say when they get sworn in and they go to social media and they talk to their friends, I'm an American now. That pride we don't even have with our kids, regardless of skin color. That's something that we need to work on. So we tell these type of stories in our short little videos that we've released thus far. They're great, and we're getting national attention. So what we share with these guys in the community, check my time again, in the community is, so what's the benefit of marriage? All these 200, we have 200 or so nonprofits. Not one of them, reinforces the values of marriage. These kids, we focus on education, getting, graduate. We all need that. We all need that, program for after school and food and all that kind of stuff. But the building blocks of civilization, that's the stuff we're talking about here. So what's the benefit of marriage? Justice Department has every year the Justice Department has a report because they get the domestic abuse calls, 911. What's the safest place for women and children? And from a relationship standpoint, it's marriage. Where they have to go for those calls, those domestic abuse calls, is often live-in relationships, ex-boyfriends, that type of thing. The benefits for men, I always show this slide for guys. It doesn't matter if, married guys that get their health screening checked more frequently versus bachelors, live-ins. And I said, well, we love to take credit for that we're taking care of our health, but that's usually our wives pushing us to get that prostate exam done and all that. So thank you, dear. I love you for it. But in all seriousness, this also the benefit from a wealth standpoint. So these next two slides are the money slides, and no pun intended. Typically, when you look at the critical race theory proponents and their slides and their education, we'll see the blue bars on the financial disparity. So that's the blue bars are income disparity by ethnic group. And Asians in this slide have the highest household income, 81,000, okay? But we rarely ever see the corresponding bar, the gray shaded bars of unwed births by demographic. They're a direct correlation. They're a direct correlation. Again, I want to give complete information and be objective as possible because I know this to be true. I actually lived through this. I've seen it happen in my own family. And what I want to make sure is that we get the whole picture out. And so if you're going to choose that side of a social program, critical race, and let's choose it with all the information you have available, not with restricted information. Again, it's a direct correlation with unwed births by demographic as far as measuring financial household income. This one here for me is one of the ones that should be driving public policy. If we want to reduce poverty in this country, you know, the nuclear family is one of the best insulators for it. Regardless of ethnicity, it drops poverty by 85, 90% by ethnic group. Now, that's not to say that every marriage is perfect, and we're not suggesting we go back to the 50s of Ozzie and Harriet and all that. But again, every civilization building block starts with the nuclear family. And unfortunately, in the Black community, this has gone on for 50 years. And one of the things we're doing is, and when I say 50 years, we've moved from 80% two-parent family to 80% fatherless home without one national initiative to reverse it until now. We're going to do this and take charge in Minneapolis. And what we're doing is this, you know, we're giving the idea that people have this as, this is fresh in everyone's mind. In fact, we have riots that's still going on with, you know, with local police action. But that's not going to be the memory that's going to happen, because what's going to happen is this. I can't tell you how much traction our organization is getting in just a short period of time, not just externally outside of Minnesota, but internally within the Black community, of wanting to get this thing. You know, people desired for it, but they're not sure how to get it. And what I'm doing is using my experience in the military, using my experience in corporate America, and my personal experience of having gone through it and lived through this, that we can start this initiative and get this turned around, exporting this idea of returning back to basics that make this country great, that makes communities great, and starts with having strong families. And with that being said, I want to end here and just say that when I was a kid, living in Harlem, New York, my grandparents oftentimes in the wintertime, we had one radiator, and that radiator would only heat part of the room. So we would open up the oven in the kitchen to heat the other side. And oftentimes the pilot light would go out, and they would have me go in, Kendall, you know, you're small enough, go in, you know, strike the match and, you know, light the pilot light. And I would do it, I get all dusty and dirty afterwards. Well, you know, my friends, you know, the freedoms that we've known for years, that we've all, you know, felt would always be there for us. We've been living off the fumes of our grandparents and our great-grandparents and the sacrifices they've committed. And it's time for this generation to relight that pilot light, get a little dusty and dirty, to make sure that the freedoms and what we know about this country is consistent for future generations. And that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm relighting the pilot light just like I did when I was a kid. And I want to thank you for your time.
More minutes. He has another place he has to be shortly, but 5 more minutes for questions.
Yes, sir.
Kendall, on the news the other night, I saw a young woman who was at Columbia University who came out of North Korea.
Yes, I saw that as well.
And she's absolutely horrified.
Yes.
Did you use that? Or
yes.
You have to take another tack? I mean, because a lot of us have said, you know, look, this is what's happening. Nobody
right.
seems to care. Is there a more positive way of maybe getting the message across?
Yeah, so for on Zoom, and for those of you that didn't hear, that he's referring to, there was a Columbia University student, Ivy League student, that actually escaped North Korea when she was 13. And what she was saying in this news report is, hey, I'm concerned, I'm scared, because what I'm hearing on college campuses is the same thing I heard as a kid in North Korea. In fact, it's even worse, what she said. And I think this is exactly what we're doing. We need to have all of us that have a vested interest in our country to speak up and speak out about what this is doing. And again, I think there's a lot of people that's executing on this critical race theory, that they have good intentions, but don't know the devastation that this could have on all of us. And it's not who we are as a country. It's not. But thank you for those comments. I saw that as well. Yes, sir.
I appreciate your experience, and you're obviously very intelligent, a lot of enthusiasm. But why do you think your approach to members of that subculture are going to have an impact? Why would they listen to you
Well, so again, the question for those is why would people in the Black community listen to me and then the people that we recruit? Well, that's a good question, and one of the reasons that I'm recruiting these people locally is because it's their message, not mine. They're the ones that will be going to these centers and have that message. And again, we're replicating it on video, packaged, so it can be evergreen. It can be pulled from many different sites. And so the question was, how do we know that's going to have? It's already having an impact. I mean, you know, we've already had 2 of the guys that were just recently involved and got involved with us testify before the Minnesota State Legislature on cannabis shops and opening up cannabis shops in North Minneapolis. And again, different faces, different people giving their personal history on why that is just a bad idea. Just a bad idea. And we're having other, you know, women that, again, you know, she shares a story. She had her first child when she was 15, had 2 other kids, and eventually got off because people believed in her. She said she would have had 5 more kids just like her friends. And she's want to help steer the direction away from that pathway. So we have people with credibility that answer your question. And they know that, guess what? The basic building blocks of what, you know, mom and dad helps as a start in life. And the fact that we accept that, well, we have enough data now, 50 years of data, longitudinal data that shows the drastic detriment that has caused the whole entire culture. Yes, Barbara.
2 questions. Where are your videos being seen? And the second question is, what can people here in this room do for this program?
Sure. So the question was, well, you know, where are the videos being seen and what can the people do? So, you know, we understand that, you know, our message is a counter narrative, and so it's going to be limited or it's going to be suppressed. So our videos are on our website obviously in the video section. And what people have done, they shared them. They shared them on their website. They shared them with friends. So it's getting around, and they're pretty provocative. You know, we have a former Black Lives Matter guy, started the Black Lives Matter chapter in St. Paul, founder, a year and a half in it. He goes, these guys don't care about Black lives. They don't care about education for these kids. And we have that package that was released 2 weeks ago. You might have seen that. But that incident happened like 5 years ago. It's repackaging the story and getting it right so it resonates. And then what people can do is, it is really it's the awareness. It's the awareness piece most of all. I'm sorry, I believe you have one. Yes.
Would you state in one sentence the critical race theory and tell us who is promulgating and pushing that now?
You know, it's interesting. First of all, critical race theory started in academia. And it's been there for a long time, actually. It started with critical theory, then they changed it to critical race theory in the 70s. And a lot of the teachers, unfortunately, in order to get their certification and validation to teach, they have to be taught by many of these same instructors and these same professors in academia. I can't tell you like who's orchestrating it, but I can tell you that all this year it has been pushed K through 12, university, corporate America, as well as the Department of Defense and armed services, as well as the academies. I can tell you, I have a group of retired general officers. They've formed an organization to fight back against critical race theory in the armed services, as well as the service academies. And they want me on their advisory board because of the traction we're getting and to help us get unified against this message. Coming out of Minneapolis will not be a remembrance of the ashes and the burning and the riots. It's going to be something very positive, and we're getting the traction for it. All right, thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, everybody, thank you so much for coming today. We're wrapping it up. Usually we end right on 8:30, but this was great to hear. Very interesting, and thank you for taking our questions. I know Kendall has another meeting he has to get to shortly. So anyways, thank you everybody for coming. Please come again next Tuesday morning. It will be my final meeting as president of the club, and we're going to celebrate what good things came out of 2020 through 2021 through this past year. So please come help celebrate. Remember, Rotary opens opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you.